Hello, this is Anthony, the creator of CleverGizmos.com and the software app Keyword Researcher. We spent a lot of time in the previous video talking about SEO, about algorithms and backlinks, and how website owners work to please the bots, the algorithms, of the almighty search engines, namely Google. But in this video, I'd like to talk about the other side of the coin. We'll be talking about pleasing the humans, satisfying the needs of your site users, the real people who visit your website. Ultimately, they're the important ones because they represent your potential customers. So one of my goals in this video series is to get you to think differently about SEO. When you quote, do SEO these days, you need to be of two minds. You need to think about the human visitors and the robot visitors simultaneously. Because recall in the previous video when we described how SEO is deeply intertwined with your user's experience, your user's satisfaction. We went over 3 factors, other than backlinks, that may affect your Google ranking. Factors that are wholly unrelated to traditional SEO. Let's recap briefly. First, we talked about navigational searches. Billions of people per month use Google for just one thing, to get to Facebook.com. They go to Google, they type in Facebook, and they click the first thing they see. Or they want to get to YouTube.com, or they want to get to Google itself, or Gmail, or Yahoo, or Amazon, or Twitter, etc., etc., etc. You can see for yourself how many people in the world use Google for these navigational searches just by looking in the Google Keyword Planner. Remember, the world's biggest search engine, Google, is usually not a search engine at all. It's just a web portal that people use to get to other websites on the internet. And Google knows this, so it makes sense for them to trust a website more if they see people repeatedly searching for a website's domain name. The website on the left is probably more trustworthy than the website on the right. Next, we talked about return visitors. Google can see the IP addresses of our computers as we are using Google to get to a website. So if the 4 people on the left like to go to Puppy Place several times a week, then that's probably a sign that puppyplace.com is more trustworthy than their competitor. Over there, the users only visit one time and then they never go back. And factor number 3, pogo sticking. If a user clicks on your site link in the Google search results page, doesn't like what he sees, and bounces right back to Google, then that is bad. That's pogo sticking. This tells Google that whatever this person is looking for, he didn't find it at this website. So eventually, they'll reduce the rank of the website for the given search query. So the point is, all of these behavior metrics are available to Google in some form or another. And to some degree, Google uses this data and other data to gauge overall, quote, user satisfaction or domain authority. And over the last couple of years, some of the big players in SEO have realized this. The guys at Noble Samurai made a nice graphic illustrating how some of the most prominent SEO companies have recently rebranded. SEO Moz became Moz, Majestic SEO became Majestic, SEO Braintrust became Marketer's Braintrust. All 3 of these companies removed the acronym SEO from both their brand name and their domain name. Now, there are probably a myriad of reasons for this, but Rand Fishkin at SEO Moz explains part of the reason quite nicely in his own announcement blog post. He says, SEO is bigger than just SEO. As hard as I fought personally and we fought as an organization over the last decade to make marketers and organizations think more holistically about organic search, the branding of the past remains. So consider the phrases here. Quote, SEO is bigger than just SEO. Quote, think more holistically. That's a perfect word to use, holistically. Here we might define it as concern for the integrated functioning of the complete system rather than its individual component parts. SEOs have traditionally been quite myopic. They mostly just built backlinks to improve their site rank, and this wasn't a bad thing because it worked. It can still work if you do it right, but I hope I've been able to convince you to think about SEO in a broader sense. To expand our field of view here, to think about SEO at both the level of the search engine robots as well as the users, to think more, quote, holistically. That's why the Taiji 2 symbol is on the box for this class. I'm sure you've seen this symbol before. It's also called the yin-yang symbol. This symbol is everywhere. Here in California, it seems like half the surfers at the beach had a similar logo on their surfboards at one time or another. It's typically associated with the Chinese philosophy of Taoism and commonly associated with Asian martial arts as well. But similar symbols appear in other cultures. Here it is again in a Roman book from 430 AD. But the basic meaning of the symbol is a representation of 2 opposites existing in harmony. 2 things that seem unrelated are actually heavily interconnected and ideally in harmony with each other. And of course, this applies so nicely to how we should start thinking about web development, about SEO. We need to be of two minds to please both the humans and the robots. So whenever I'm designing a WordPress theme or thinking about SEO in general, I tend to naturally think of this symbol because, look, when you're creating an SEO optimized web page, then you need to operate your website with both in mind. You have to learn to see your website like Googlebot sees your website, and see your website like your human customers see your website. In this class, we teach both. We talked about search engines and bots in the previous video, but now let's talk about the humans. How do humans interact with machines? You might not be aware that there is actually a large and growing field of study devoted to this very question. Interface design is, up until recently, a much under-recognized discipline, but it's an important one. To emphasize this point, here's a picture of the infamous 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. In 1979, there was a partial nuclear meltdown, in part due to a poorly designed indicator light. So, look at this control panel. It's very easy to press the wrong button on a complicated interface like this. So there was a minor incident which caused the operators on duty to get confused, and a catastrophe ensued which caused radiation to be released upon the citizens of Pennsylvania. So interface design is an important field. Somebody out there had to make decisions about how to design this power plant interface. What color should the lights be? When should we use a lever instead of a switch? When should we sound an audible alarm? These are seemingly trivial questions, but they actually can be a matter of life and death, yet most people aren't aware that this field of study even exists. Possibly because it goes by many names. Back in the day, it was often called MMI, man-machine interaction. But that was a bit sexist, so they started calling it HMI, human-machine interaction. Which is a bit confusing because sometimes when people say HMI, they're referring to the interface device itself. So sometimes HMI means human-machine interface. But then came the advent of computing. Computers are not typically referred to as machines anymore, so they changed the M to a C, human-computer interaction. People who specialize in software interfaces or web interfaces might use this term. I spent a little time at the HCI lab at UCSD in 2002. Things were pretty different back then, and the term HCI is more of an academic term. The most commonly used term these days is probably just UI, which stands for user interface, and is often paired with the word design, as in user interface design. And this is often paired with the acronym UX, which means user experience. Quite often these two acronyms are placed side by side, usually written as UI/UX, user interface design / user experience design. Right or wrong, these words are often used interchangeably in the industry. Here's a local job listing I pulled off of Craigslist here in Orange County. You'll notice how they've titled their job post UI/UX. This is a very typical listing of a company looking for an interface designer. But in any case, it doesn't really matter what you call it. These are all just fancy words that describe the process of obtaining our desired goal, which is to make the user happy. E.g., don't confuse the user, don't make buttons hard to find, don't tell him things he doesn't need to know, don't piss the user off, don't require your user to devote too much thought to the mere act of using your interface, your website. In other words, don't make him think too hard. This is why Steve Krug's seminal work was titled Don't Make Me Think. The original edition was published over 15 years ago and is quite dated now, but this is definitely the most widely read book in the field. It's worth reading the updated version if you get a chance because UI design, web usability, user behavior, these are important emerging fields. You'll notice on the job listing from Craigslist, this company is paying a salary of $90,000 for a UI UX guy. I actually just randomly screen grabbed this job post when I was making this video. I didn't notice the salary until much later. It's pretty high, but that's not all that uncommon these days. It's hard to find a guy who's really good at this stuff. A user interface design specialist. It's easy to find a programmer to build a user interface or a website for you if you pay him, but finding a guy who knows how to build interfaces that your customers actually enjoy using, and more importantly, an interface that doesn't confuse your customers while they're using it, that's hard to do. Web interface design is a very subtle, very nuanced skill. When I did this stuff in college, you would never see job listings like this, but now such jobs are everywhere. This field has really been taking off over the last few years, primarily because everyone is on the internet now and everyone carries a web-enabled smartphone. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking about a career skill set to acquire, I'd encourage you to keep watching and think about UI UX because it's really blowing up right now. Okay, so let's do a UI job now. We're going to tweak the top interface of the Fusion 7 pitch page. This is a good example of a web page to fix up because Fusion is a fairly large software app from a fairly sizable technology company, VMware. Now, thankfully, VMware has made some improvements to their web page recently, but this is what the page looked like for version 7. So first, take a minute and try to ask yourself this. What is this page trying to sell me? Why does this page even exist? If you look at a web page and you can't ascertain what they're trying to sell you, then that might be a bad sign. If you're already familiar with this company, try to pretend that you're a new visitor here and that you've just stumbled upon this page and ask yourself what this web page is all about. So let's take a look. The first thing you might notice is how many times the company name exists above the fold. 5 times. And then you might notice how many times they've said the product name, Fusion, 4 times. And then you might notice how the biggest graphic on this page is just this huge number 7 here. So let's think about what this web page is conveying to a new user. What pieces of information would someone really come to know so far after glancing at this page? All we know so far is there's something on this page called VMware. There's something here called Fusion, and the number 7 has something to do with something. So ask yourself, do you find any of this information to be of particular importance to you? Are these 3 pieces of information in any way piquing your interest to buy something from this company? Do you know what this product even does, or can you even tell if they're selling a product or not? I remember when I first came to this page, it took me a while to figure out. And the reason is pretty clear because it's hard to know what this product, VMware Fusion 7, actually does unless you are observant enough to ignore everything on this page except this little tiny bit of gray text in the bottom left corner here. It says run Windows on your Mac. Above the fold, this is the only useful datum of information on the entire web page. So I hope it's obvious to you that this is not a very efficient layout if you're trying to sell a complex piece of software over the internet. There's a nice little Frank Kern copywriting shortcut. Frank reportedly learned this from his old boss. It goes like this. When you're writing copy, when you're trying to sell something, then you should be able to quickly convey 3 foundational items to your target consumer. This is what I got. This is what it will do for you. This is what I want you to do next. So in looking at this webpage, can you answer these 3 simple questions? I can't. So let's see if we can fix this. First, look at all this dead space here on top. There's a lot of room here that I'd like to use, but we have some elements on the left here getting in the way. So let's ask ourselves if we really need these. The first one is a line of breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs do have a place in web navigation. They're typically a lot less useful than designers think they are. But let's see if they're adding any value here. The first link goes to the home page. The second link goes to the company product page. But they have the same link 1 inch away right here. And the third link simply refreshes the page we're already on. So I don't think these 3 links are useful enough to take up valuable above the fold real estate on this pitch page. So I'm going to kill them. Now I did like the home link though, and I noticed that there is no textual link to the home page on their top horizontal navigation bar. In web design, it's conventional to link to the home page via the company logo, which they've nicely done here. But not everybody who uses the internet is familiar with this convention. So we have plenty of room here, and I would simply add a link to home right here in the black space. Okay, next line. The next line says VMware Fusion. So they're listing the company name, VMware, and the product name, Fusion, again. Recall when we first examined this page, we noted how many times the company name and the product name already appeared. So the last thing we need is more redundancy there. So I'm going to remove that line for now. And now we have this third item. This is a secondary horizontal navigation bar. It's not necessarily always bad to have a secondary nav bar to link to product features and product comparisons. But when you actually click these links, you'll notice they go to secondary pages that contain content that could have easily been merged into just one page, the page we're currently on now. There have been various studies that show that, quote, long-form sales pages usually convert better. Generally, you don't want to force your user to spend too much time clicking around between pages just to learn about your product. So I'd delete these 3 links as well, and I'd merge all their data into just this one page. Okay, so notice we have lots of above the fold white space to work with now. So let's add a bold sentence that actually tells the user what this software is and what this software does. There, Fusion 7 lets you run Windows on your Mac. Okay, that's what Fusion 7 does. If you buy Fusion 7, then you can run Microsoft Windows on your Mac. You always split test headings to be sure, but whatever heading ultimately goes up here, it's difficult to get more conspicuous than that. Recall in the original web page how this information was hidden in the left corner. So we're obviously conveying that information better now, and we can erase this gray text. Okay, now what about this big ugly graphic? It's great to have a product graphic above the fold on your homepage, but this is just a stylized way of displaying the number 7, which just doesn't add anything to the pitch. Most users probably wouldn't even know what this number 7 even represents. It represents the software's current version number, but who cares? And we already have Fusion 7 on top now anyway, so let's kill this image and make room for something else. Okay, now we have these 4 buttons on the right. I actually like these 4 buttons. It's useful to have an array of color-saturated buttons like this, for users to have some main action areas to click on, especially try for free and buy online. When you're selling software, then the try it and the buy it buttons are typically pretty important because it's conventional in software sales to allow the user to download your demo to try it before they buy it. So it's important to make those two action steps obvious to the user. Now these other two buttons, upgrade and support, are probably not quite as important. These are mostly for users who already own the app. The way you design for existing users is a bit different than the way you design for new users who have just arrived at your page. So let's see if we can mix these buttons up a bit better. So for the first button, the try for free button, you'll notice I've colored it green. Green or blue are typically the colors to use for such buttons. Green and blue are the safe action colors. I've also changed the text from try for free to download the Fusion 7 free trial because I'm trying to be as obvious as possible with my text here. With button text, we strive to convey to the user exactly what is going to happen if he clicks the button. And since getting the free trial into the user's hand is such a vital step in online software sales, I went with some multi-line text here for our button. For the second button, the buy button, we color this one orange. Orange has traditionally tested out as the best color for buy buttons, but it would be interesting to split test these two on the page and see which color combination is most effective. Now the other two buttons were primarily for existing users, upgrade and support, and I'm going to render these into not buttons, but links, and add some gray text here that says, are you an existing user? So why do we do that? Remember, an existing user is a much different animal than a user who stumbles upon your website randomly from Google. Existing users have already bought something from you. Money has already been exchanged. So there typically isn't a pressing need to make the upgrade button so prevalent. And remember that the support link is already resident at the top horizontal navigation bar anyway. So it's a bit redundant to print it again, but because getting tech support is notoriously difficult in any piece of software, I decided to add it below the upgrade link anyway. Okay, so we've successfully relocated our 4 buttons, so we can get rid of the original buttons. And our webpage is coming along. Now, recall how few actual pieces of information we could glean from the original page. The only thing that told us anything was that little gray sentence in the corner. So let's fix that. Let's actually give the user some product information. We'll add a descriptive product paragraph and heading on top of our buttons here. And for our final step, let's add a video. Now, if you scroll down on their original webpage, you can actually see their video link. Right here, the video itself is really very, very nicely done. It's got great animation and it actually tells the user about the product features quite well. So it's unfortunate that it's so low on the page. Additionally, you'll notice that this image doesn't really look like a video player. This image is a square, but people on the net are used to clicking on videos with a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's the ratio YouTube uses, for example. And the graphic is not very indicative of what the video is about. Video thumbnails should attempt to represent the video content to the user. You'll also notice that they're using a play button that is semi-translucent and doesn't really stick out very well from the thumbnail. So let's fix that. Let's slide a new video player in here on the right. Now, we've done a few things. First, the video is higher on the page now, of course. It's now above the fold. Again, above the fold elements get more clicks. Second, we've added a border around our player. You'll notice that it looks more like a standard video player now. And we're using a 16:9 rectangle like YouTube uses. Third, we've added a better video thumbnail that reflects the product's functionality better. We've also put a little time constraint here along the bottom edge. Watch this brief video now. And we've added a bright red saturated play button. This obviously sticks out better than the previous gray translucent play button. Okay, so those were 4 pretty simple tweaks, but I think the video is much more conspicuous now and will get more views. So let's take a moment and review our new design. Recall our copywriting shortcut. This is what I got. This is what it can do for you. This is what I want you to do next. So let's fill in the blanks. This is what I got, Fusion 7. This is what it will do for you, runs Windows on your Mac. This is what I want you to do next. You can try it, buy it, or watch the video to learn more. So notice how, in our new design, all these elements are above the fold and prominently displayed to the user. Again, this is what I got, Fusion 7. This is what it will do for you, runs Windows on your Mac. This is what I want you to do next. You can try it, you can buy it, or watch the video to learn more. We want the user to click one of these buttons. So, when compared to the original design, I hope the improvements in our new page are fairly obvious. You should always split test pitch pages, but it is my opinion that because of our revisions, this webpage would sell more software than the original webpage. And of course, that's the whole point, to sell more stuff, to increase conversions. In UI design, very subtle changes can lead to big rewards. And as you get more into this stuff, you'll find that it's typical of companies, even big companies, to make obvious mistakes on their product pages. Not because their employees aren't smart. The guys at VMware are very smart. It's extremely difficult to program complex software like Fusion 7. I'm a programmer and I couldn't do it. It's not about smarts. It's because these skill sets, user interface design, user experience design, copywriting, these skills are not dependent on raw intelligence or programming ability or graphic design ability, artistic talent. During our little fix-up, I didn't really program or draw anything on this page at all. Mostly, I just manipulated the text and colors, and I took the stuff that was already there and moved it around. I want to stress that point. What people don't realize is that the mere positioning of your page elements is often more important than the elements themselves. The way that your information is arranged on your interface is pivotal. It can mean the difference between getting a sale and not getting a sale, between making your users happy or just confusing them. Again, in this class we teach both. Doing SEO these days means making happy robots and happy users. The search engines, Googlebot, they're looking for things like proper use of HTML tags, like your title tag and H1 tag, etc. Descriptive keywords. Are you referring to your product or service the same way that your customers do? Conspicuous navigation. Are your pages easy to get to? Can Googlebot effortlessly index your website? But the human users, your customers, are looking for things like message clarity. Is the purpose of your webpage obvious to the user? Can he ascertain what you're trying to tell him? Or content that reflects their search goals? Do you got what he's looking for? If he typed how to build a doghouse into Google and you're trying to sell him a camera, then your content obviously doesn't reflect his commercial intent. And also an easy to use, attractive interface. Are your buttons clearly marked? Are the action steps you'd like the user to take obvious to him? Is the page aesthetically pleasing to the eye? We'll go over this a bit more in the next video, but I hope it's becoming clear that this class is a bit different than most SEO classes. We're taking a holistic approach here, and I'm trying to convey the importance of learning both of these distinct disciplines. When you do SEO these days, I wouldn't recommend doing one without the other. And if you know how to harmonize these skill sets, that's quite an asset to have, and that's one of the primary goals of this class.